what's really good about the industry is it does require a mentorship program for a couple of years. So if someone is new to industry, never worked as a mortgage broker beforehand, they would need to be under a mentor agreement, basically, which allows them to be able to learn on the job. But there's obviously a lot of people that are interested in the industry. There's a capacity to earn a lot of money. But I think for the majority of mortgage brokers, a lot of them that are coming into the industry might not necessarily have worked in a bank beforehand or have financial knowledge. So I think that's really important. You want somebody who has an understanding of what they're doing in this field. And I've spent a lot of time speaking to a lot of mortgage brokers from a variety of different walks in life. I think this is just me ballparking it, but 70 to 80% of them might not necessarily have had that exposure in that industry beforehand before becoming a mortgage broker.
Yeah. And it's interesting, right? You talk about mentorships and mentor programs, right? It depends on what your mentor is good at as well, right? Your mentor might be good at just vanilla house and land packages or just, refinance applications. They might not have that breadth of experience. And so while the mentor program is great, it just gives you that edge in those particular fields. And, when I see, mortgage brokers, testing out on clients, right? Typically look what the buyer's agent does right now. They don't have a portfolio of their own. They don't have anything of their own. And they're going out, finding investment properties or finding, development properties for other people. Typically, I can compare that and use that analogy for mortgage brokers as well, where they haven't done a lot of these new loans. And so they're treating into open waters if they don't have that experience of if they're not exposed to some of these. It's a bit of a chicken and egg story, I understand, because look, unless and until you get the experience, you're not going to get there. And so how do you make sure that you get that breadth of experience? And could potentially be that one of the things could be that, you work for a bigger brokerage or you tie and team up in a strategic partnership in such a way that, you focus on your niche, but you work together with someone in a different niche on a very like-for-like basis, on a continuous formation, so that, you're learning the ropes of this new niche before you start writing some of that business as well. What are your thoughts on, these mortgage brokers and the flood of mortgage brokers? And, while, you can have a really good friend, that necessarily does not mean that, he's the best or he or she is the best person to just manage your finances.
100%. Look, I think one of the mentorship challenges at the moment as well is that you can have someone who's worked at a bank come and who's worked as a bank as a lender per se, and come into the environment as a mortgage broker without having to serve that mentorship agreement, right? And that's challenging because if you've been working in a bank for say 7 or 8 years and then coming out into the broker world, you might not have that exposure with 40, 50 different banks that we can offer. So there's a bit of a challenge there and a bit of a disconnect in regards to people that are moving from banks to becoming mortgage brokers. And I think especially with as someone who's worked at a big bank for a number of years before stepping out myself, with the changes in commission structures within the banks following the Royal Commission, a lot of people are becoming mortgage brokers because they see it as a more viable way to make similar kinds of income that they might have made 6, 7 years ago, basically. I think it's important to, I guess, I find, especially when doing loans for people that are my friends or family members, is that it can be a little bit, I don't know if it would be the word disconnect would come about, but you get a very in-depth view in the way that people live. And it can be a good thing and a bad thing, right? Once you've gone there and you've done that for that person, you know more about them than anyone else in the world, maybe even more than their spouses know. So
yes. They say you have to be very careful from the doctors, lawyers, and the mortgage brokers, right? Because you're opening up your complete life to these people. So 100%, I could totally see that. But it's also important to understand that, a lot of these new people who are coming in, it's almost like, there needs to be a prerequisite that you have been exposed to lending, right? I see a lot of accountants turning up into mortgage brokers. I see a lot of, people working in, a payable role or a receivable role in a big corporate, or just a financial accountant turning into a mortgage broker, because yes, there is a parity between the two, but the skills are not transferable. Isn't that right?
100%. I mean, what I do requires a lot of different hats to put on, right? So obviously you're a tax accountant, but you're not a tax accountant. You're a real estate agent, but not a real estate agent. You're a financial analyst, but not a financial analyst. You need to maintain client relationships. You also need to be able to speak to banks, build rapport. So there's a lot of different hats that you need to be putting on at a variety of different times. So I think if you've done one segment and you've done really well, maybe it's the tax side of things. Yes, you might be able to understand that side of it, but you might not necessarily be able to understand the lending side of it. How to be able to, I guess, work with different policies with different banks. So you're right. There's a lot of people that are transferred from other industries to becoming mortgage brokers that might be able to do one side of it really well, but not necessarily capture all of it.